What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the PT Coffee Cast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. I really have no complaints. We got a little bit of a lift in earlier, which was kind of fun.
Yep.
It doesn't often happen.
Yep.
As much as you'd think it would.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good morning. Workout, coffee, seminar promotion, which we're going to talk about on this episode. What else?
I think sometimes just chatting.
Just chatting. We're going to get into a little chat.
Yeah, because just chatting for us, I think you need that. You need time to just talk and not have an agenda.
Talking about Jocko.
Yeah, talking about Jocko fuel, motivation, discipline. Inevitably, any conversation we have ends up becoming some kind of structured thing that we can create a podcast about or something.
Yeah. Just stuff that we're fired up about.
Yeah.
But guys, thanks for tuning in. We're fired up to have you guys back. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you head over to your podcast platform and subscribe, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. If you want to see our beautiful faces, our beautiful hats, all that good stuff, we are putting out our video episodes on YouTube for you to view. We also put out some other fun videos there. We just dropped a funny running related video that I highly recommend you guys take a look at. It consists of Will and I being in peanut butter and jelly costumes. So check it out. You won't want to miss that. And subscribe so you don't miss out on any other videos that we put up there. We want to try to get to 500 subscribers on our YouTube channel this year. And we're making our way. So I'm happy about that. And then if you guys want to learn more about the Movement Mentorship, you can head over to our website, themovementmentorship.com. Check out everything out there from a mentorship standpoint. We're going to talk a little bit about that today on the podcast. But before we get to that, Will and I want to discuss how our New Year's resolutions have been going. If you guys haven't checked out that episode, it was one of the first episodes we did this year, where we talked about some of our personal, New Year's resolutions, some of our clinical resolutions, and we want to give you guys a little check-in. We're a month out from that, which, most people are always falling off the horse when it comes to New Year's resolutions, a month out or so. So this is to see if we're still on that horse.
You know what? I'm going to throw this your way because I feel like I'm always the person that gets to talk a lot at the start, right?
All right.
It kind of naturally flows. So I'm going to throw it to you. I'm really interested. I want to hear about you. Okay?
Okay, this makes me feel good.
So how are your New Year's resolutions going so far? First of all, what were they?
Yeah.
And,
So the two that I talked about on that episode was I have a goal of rucking every day for the whole year of 2024, a minimum of 10 minutes, a maximum of however long I want. Usually it's been 45 minutes cap, 10 minutes at minimum. So that was one of them. And then my other one, which is more clinically related, was, taking more time to enjoy the moments and be present with my clients, whether it be a positive situation or a negative situation where they're maybe not in the best place. So those are the two things that I kind of set out as my New Year's resolutions on the podcast. To give you a little update, we're still rucking. Been hitting every day. I think today is day 39 or something like that. I'm still really enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun. It's a good way to just get me out, be outside. So I do them all outside, regardless of weather or temperature or anything. So during the darkness of the winter months, it's a good way to force yourself to get outside because I think we get trapped inside a lot, especially here in Ontario during the winter, and it can be very long and dark. So I think that's been a good thing mentally. And then the other thing is the reason I set out this challenge was not necessarily from a physical standpoint, but more from a mental standpoint of consistently doing something every single day for a whole year is really hard, but it's simple, and kind of trying to prove to myself that doing the simple things every single day will compound over time. And it's almost just building that skill. So how much is this going to transform me from a physical standpoint? Probably going to have some impact, but more from a mental standpoint of like building the skill of like doing something consistently for a long period of time. But what I've actually gained from it that I wasn't really expecting was it's a really good reflection time for me. So I've also kind of made the challenge to myself now of like posting like a video of me sharing a thought that I've had. And it's good for me to kind of reflect on like what's going on in my life or things that I'm reading or things that are coming up in my day-to-day that I'm thinking about, and it gives me a way to then like try and articulate my thoughts that are in my head, which I think is like an important skill to develop as a person, but even when you think about as a clinician is like how do you take these ideas in your head, these thoughts that when they're roaming around in there make a lot of sense, and then how do you like articulate them in a way that makes sense to people that is consuming it. And like I'm sure in my 39 days I've had some that make a lot of sense. I've had others that maybe don't make as much sense, but that's been a really cool thing that I've experienced by doing the rucking as well outside of the physical realm.
Yeah, it's cool. It's actually going to end up being like a bit of like a log that you'll be able to look through and see those different thoughts.
Yeah.
I would challenge anyone to try to do a video like that. Like, even if you don't post it, just have a thought. You know, if you have a thought come up, try to record it and verbalize it. It's an interesting experience, I think.
And like I'm doing it so I can post it as a reel on Instagram. So it's like 1:30. So it really challenges me to be concise and direct. And that's something I'm trying to work on from a communication standpoint. One of my rucking videos I shared that like one of the things that I've learned from comedians about communication that I've tried to improve on is like economy of words. And so it really forces me to think about, okay, what is the point that I'm trying to get across? How do I also incorporate that point into somewhat of a story, because we know how important stories are to like learning and communication. And then how do I do that in 1:30 to like make it good or make sense or communicate the point, and that's been like super challenging. So I think there's benefits to like communicating in a short window of time, and then there's benefits of being able to have a long form conversation, which I feel like I do a lot more often with the podcast and like what we do day to day. So it's kind of challenging me in a different way. Like we have long form conversations with our clients every day,
and yet there's micro conversations within those
where like working on being concise and using less words and having pauses and the speed and the cadence and the inflections in your voice, like those things are all super important. It's kind of like gets into the weeds of it, but it's something that I really enjoy, and I watch a bunch of different people and I watch it from the perspective of like how are they communicating this and what are they doing to elicit this response by their physical actions or their inflections or their pause or a callback or something like that.
And speaking of communication, your second part, like your more clinical aspect of your New Year's resolution.
Yeah, which is like embracing more of the moments with like your clients, like really sitting in the wins. And I think that comes with just like going through that process with your clients. Like I haven't had a lot of opportunity to experience that because it's only been a month since we did this, but there was a time where it was actually in the opposite of like enjoying like a happy magical moment. It was like the opposite, where someone was really struggling, and I could tell like emotionally they were having a hard time, and like from the moment we walked in, like body language, response, tone of voice, all that stuff. And so it was hard for me because like I'm an emotional person and like I'm very empathetic, so I can very much like take on that emotion. And in the conversation I could tell that she was really upset about something, and you know how conversations stay like surface level, and I was like asking her and she's like, yeah, I'm okay, blah, blah, blah. And like I could sense there was something there, so I had like asked her, which in the past I wouldn't have done this. I've kind of tried to dive deeper into this with my clients, but I basically said, because we were ready to transition into the session, and I basically said something along the lines of like, so I'm sensing that you're a bit upset or frustrated or there's something off, would you want to share that with me, or something along those lines? I can't remember the exact verbiage I used. And then that opened up Pandora's box, which was it was all good, but it was very emotional. And I almost, like, I was getting emotional with it, and I was just trying to, like, in the moment, just sit in that emotion, like, with her and with me feeling it as well, and not, like, run away from it, because it's very easy to, like, immediately run away from that, and, like, transition out to, like, okay, let's get to the exercise, or let's move away from this conversation. And I really forced myself to sit in it, which was uncomfortable. Like, it was uncomfortable, and it was eliciting, like, a lot more emotional responses, like, for me. And in that moment, I'm trying to, like, contain my emotion, because I obviously can't be the one that goes off the rails, but I'm very emotional. So it was a very challenging situation, because I had to kind of gather myself to, like, then be able to facilitate the conversation with her, and make sure that, like, if I just started, like, bawling and was super emotional, which, like, I felt that level of emotion where I wanted to, like, really cry, honestly, it wouldn't have been a good situation. So I kind of had to reel it together and, like, facilitate it, but I'm kind of going off, I'm ranting now, but yeah, that was a moment that I had that would highlight that New Year's resolution.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Anything else?
That's it. Don't let me talk forever.
Do you want me to give you an update?
Yes.
All right. I have to think about it. Okay. All right. I'm good.
That's quick.
I started running, so that was one thing, because I'm trying to do a couple of races this year. So I think I'm up to, like, 17-ish weekly volume in terms of kilometers. And I think it's not a ton to comment on that, but it's going well so far. And then as far as, like, nutrition, I think one of my biggest things was just learning more about nutrition, so that I could, one, work on my own health, but also be able to have more rich conversations with my clients. And that's been really good. I've been having definitely more in-depth conversations about nutrition and habit stacking and things like that with my clients, whereas before it would have been a lot more surface level. I think from now going forward, I want to actually learn a little bit more of the underlying science, but underneath some stuff a little bit better. Like, one of my weak points is more like the actual physiology of certain things is a challenge for me. I'm pretty good at explaining things from, like, a macro level and communicating things so that people understand them, but then actually understanding the physiology is something I don't know that well, and I just want to know a little bit more so that I can level up my nutrition. So that's kind of where I'm, like, specifically trying to improve my knowledge there. And then what was my other one? I wanted to do a CrossFit competition.
Yeah.
Which is happening.
It's happening.
I'm doing the CrossFit Open in March.
It's like I think it's the first week of March it starts.
So my goal is to scale it appropriately and not let my ego get the best of me, because I don't train CrossFit generally. Although now I am trying to do some CrossFit training. Not that I think it's going to really prepare me for March. It's really not that much time. But I want to immerse myself a little bit more in it and be in the challenge.
Yeah.
You know? Does that make sense? Like, I want to see how hard are some of these movements, like, what are some of the challenges. It just makes me get a little more aligned with when I'm programming for people that are doing it. I'm a little more aware of how hard certain movements are and, like, how they need to be structured for people that can't do those movements yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it.
Sweet. Yeah, man, I think it's been cool. You very much activated on, like, your resolutions, like, very quickly.
Well, I was already like
From a nutrition standpoint.
most of my New Year's resolutions, I had already been kind of starting, right?
Yeah.
They were just really reframing them so that they were a little more specific. But I was already working on my nutrition. I was already planning on doing running and CrossFit and stuff. So I already had a plan enacted prior to the new year. And I think that's...
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I also think there's a lot to be said to activate on that plan, because it's very easy to push off the CrossFit events. It's I'll just do... We have a lot of exposure to that, so it'd be very easy to be I'll just do the rowing regatta in August, or maybe I'll just wait and do the fall classic in October, right? Which is, there's a planning and then there's executing, and I think those are two important things that are separate. And I feel like people struggle with both in different times. I've struggled with both in different times, but I think the execution and the courage to do that is hard. That holds people back a lot. So I've been impressed by you just making that jump as quickly as you can, within reason, obviously. I think that helps a lot. That's always helped me, where the gap between plan in my head and putting some type of accountability on the calendar, try to make it as close as you can within reason, right? Because the farther that gets out, the more stories you can tell yourself about how you don't want to do it, right?
Well, thank you. And I think that's a good point. And I think I have learned in that specific area, because in the past, I think what held me back was fear of failing as a broad thing. But when you think about it, it's so what if I can't do the CrossFit thing perfectly? I don't do CrossFit. It's fine. No one's going to care. That's only my own fear. That's really not that actually true.
Yeah, it's just a story you're telling.
Exactly.
Telling yourself and building up in your mind, which...
And previously that would have held me back from doing it, because I'd be well, it's too soon, I'm going to go, and it's not going to go great. But it's what's the definition of it being a success? Is I just want to immerse myself in that community and show them that I'm out there working on practicing what I preach, basically.
So do you think the ability to overcome that comes from reframing the purpose of what you're getting out of doing the event? Or what do you think helped you this time overcome that fear that normally would be a barrier?
I think it's understanding that happens. And understanding my own psychology a little bit and what my defense mechanisms are. And I think at times I'm a bit of a perfectionist with my performance. And so I've just identified that I have this thing where I need myself to be at a certain level prior to doing something. And I don't know how I've arrived. I think through conversations and just being open to critiquing myself more has led to that insight.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to look at your own thoughts, ask people about it, directly or indirectly, try to arrive at those kind of things.
Yeah, there's two pieces I want to transition into the seminar that we're going to talk about. I think there's something to that. But the one thing is that I talked about this on, maybe it was the podcast that we did about resolutions, about the importance of you as a person going, and this is anyone, but you in this situation as a person going through this journey, and what you're learning about going through the process of doing these things translates very much over to rehab, because a lot of people struggle with that same thing. It's not in the context of performance, but it's in the fear of being judged because they put this injury off for so long, the fear of not knowing what the injury is and what the outcome can be, and not being able to get back to what they were, where they were before. There's a lot of that influences people starting, and trying to facilitate people to overcome that fear, which is generally a fear that they're just building up in their own head, a story they're telling themselves. And you see it a lot when people finally do take the have the courage to come in, which I continue to highlight how much we need to bring that up to people, that it takes a lot of courage to ask for help, because then once they do and they realize that like they're building this story up in their head and it wasn't as drastic as like they thought, it ends up, you can see that kind of like relief, and that you can tell that they're going to start on the journey to like actually accomplishing what they want to accomplish. So I think it's good to go through that as a person, because now you know that they're probably doing it in their own way. It's probably different, but they're doing it in the same process, and understanding what that process is very important to facilitating it, the success, the likelihood of success for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why we preach getting in there, doing it, because you can understand those things from just
a theoretical standpoint.
But there's another thing to have that experience and be able to relate to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And then like transitioning into the seminar that we're putting out, it's going to be February 29th, 8 a.m. Joining us for a cup of coffee. We're super stoked to get another webinar online for the mentorship. We did one probably later last year, and it was great. We had like great success. It was awesome. And so we're doing another one this year. This coming month, it's on the topic of overcoming your imposter syndrome, which we take you through how you can create your own super physio. So this is first module in our mentorship, a part of it. And we think it's the most important thing, and it's why it's the first thing that we do in the mentorship, to starting to overcome imposter syndrome, which doesn't go away, but you can overcome it by developing tools and using skills to manage it. And I think that's what we talk about a lot. And what got me thinking about it is that what we do in that module is we have clinicians reflect. We have them think about what they value, what their standards are. Who do they admire as a physio? Who do they not admire as a physio, or qualities of a physio? And you really sit down and you reflect on those things, and then you reflect on what you want to get out of your career. And I think when you take the time to do that, then you're more aware of what you actually want, or what you actually struggle with, or what you actually don't want, that can help you make decisions and guide you throughout your career. Very similar to like being able to reflect on yourself and know that, hey, my fear of performance and being perfect has been holding me back. I need to adjust this to be able to take me to where I want to go with the things that in my mind I've set out as goals. And I think there's a lot of like relation to that idea. And that's a lot of what the webinar is going to be about, is like helping clinicians identify that. And we've preached this on the podcast forever, that we think that that's like the most important thing that you could probably do as a new grad or a clinician at any point in your career if you haven't done it already.
And what we see most of the time is that there often is a bit of a gap between who you want to be and where you're at, but it's not nearly as big as you might imagine. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're hoping with this webinar to help you arrive at. And this comes from a place of, we both really struggled with imposter syndrome coming out of school. It's something that was affecting us pretty heavily at the start of our career, and we've, through the help of other people and just learning about ourselves and going through it, have figured some of this stuff out. And so our hope is to help you arrive at that earlier, because there's no reason that you can't be a confident clinician right away, right out of school, and go out there and change lives.
Yeah, I love it. So if you guys are interested in that webinar, there's a link in the bio on our Instagram. There's a link in the show notes of this episode that you can sign up for and join us for a cup of coffee. It's going to be 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, February 29th. It'll be about an hour in length. We're super stoked about it. So if you're interested, sign up. But I think that's it.
Yeah, but I do have a message for the people out there.
Okay.
Can I deliver this?
Go for it.
All right, listen. So I'm just going to get real for a minute here. Dalton and I are on YouTube now. And let me tell you, the comments are not very positive. Okay? We've got people saying, not everyone should podcast, this and that. It's really hurting our feelings. So what we want is for you to go leave us a nice positive comment, okay?
Build us up a little bit.
Help give us some confidence. You know, we're on the road to 500 subscribers, okay? Just go leave us a little love, thumbs up. Hey, I think you guys should be podcasting, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know what? We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We love doing the podcast. We're excited about the podcast, the mentorship, everything that we're doing. So thank you for your support. It does mean a lot. We know you guys are out there supporting us, so we really do appreciate it. But that's all we got for today, guys. As always, stay caffeinated. Peace.
Nice.